Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. It's springtime. It's football time in Oklahoma. And there was a big recruiting weekend this past Saturday and Sunday. And it started actually last Wednesday for some of them. And those players just left Sunday, and one of them just left today, or this evening. So we'll talk about all of that here on this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. Parker, it's been a busy weekend for you and I. We were everywhere, even covering the junior day. I've got tons of notes coming on OU Insider. I mean, plethora, and I know you do too. So what for you, I guess, did you get a sunburn? I guess is the other thing whenever we can see your screen.
Yeah, I did get a sunburn and managed to make it about 30 seconds into this YouTube Live before my webcam malfunctioned again. But this happens every week, doesn't it, Brandon? Like
only on it, it's fascinating.
We'll sit here and do the podcast
only on this
for 2.5 hours, and the webcam is just fine the entire time, but we cannot make it through a whole live show without something going haywire. Regardless, I didn't burn as bad as I did the previous weekend by any stretch of the imagination. I put on sunscreen. I was careful about it. I didn't think I was going to burn. I did.
Even wore long sleeves. I can verify that.
Exactly. I was in long sleeves.
Black.
So God. I took precautions, but you're out there in the sun for long enough. You're going to come away with some sun damage one way or another. But no, it was a very, very productive weekend down at Battle Dallas. Obviously, you spent Sunday, Brandon, at the Elite 11 Regionals in Dallas, taking a look at four-star Oklahoma quarterback commit Jackson Arnold. So that, combined with the star-studded weekend of visitors at Oklahoma that were on campus this past weekend, made for a very productive 48 to 72-hour window for us.
I literally said we both were at multiple 7-on-7s because in my head, because I was, but mine was totally different. The one thing I will say, the 7-on-7 I was at, the lone 8th grader that in OK Preps that has an offer from Vanderbilt, Colton Yarbrough, he was there on hand with C4. So I got to talk to him a bit and watch him a little bit. Very athletic, 6'5", 215 pounds, 8th grader. That is going to be a fantastic edge rusher whenever, or defensive line. I don't know what he's going to grow into. I mean, he's going to weigh 270, 275 when it's all said and done. But I mean, let me ask you this about the 7-on-7s. From an evaluation standpoint, I agree with Gabe Brooks on this. It's hard to quantify what you're looking at because of the lack of plays that some of them do, because some of them take like 3 minutes between, snaps, calling the plays out and all that type of stuff. Whereas the real organized teams, they'll go no huddle and just thrash defenses, play call after play call, running plays. What's your take on the evaluation portion of it? Because for me, it's hit or miss. Like, I don't know. I find it fascinating. They can only rush one time on every series, so you have to use it wisely and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, the rules vary depending on which organization is in charge of running the tournament. So I do agree. It's kind of hard to quantify what you're looking at just because nobody's wearing pads. Right. It's all passing all the time. And this is why I often add caveats whenever I evaluate guys just based on their 7-on-7 performances. Like, I have no bones about saying after this past weekend, Jaden Rashad is the most dominant quarterback I've ever seen in a 7-on-7 environment. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the most dominant quarterback I've ever seen on Friday night when there are 22 men on the field wearing pads. So I think you got to kind of handle it on a case-by-case basis. There are some guys that you can just tell, their skills and the way that they play the game are going to have to translate from that environment into a game environment. And it's often not really difficult to tell when you step out there to watch these contests. If there's a 4 or 5-star prospect out there, you can typically tell who it is. Now, as far as finding the guys who are gamers, maybe don't stand out as much physically, but just get the job done on the gridiron, those are a little bit more difficult to identify in 7-on-7s for that reason.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. It is. It's so hard. Like, the one thing I will say that for me, the evaluation part, watching guys move around, watching them run routes, seeing them catch, getting off of bump and runs, because regardless of if you're in pads or helmets or not, somebody bumping up and running on you and pressing on press coverage on you is, and you getting out of it as a wide receiver and handling the physicality, that's going to translate over when you have pads on. That's something that will translate. Route running will translate. Catching translates. Now, the difference is, you're not going to get freaking just laid out when you reach up in the air to grab that ball that's just, so out of reach that you had to kind of give up your body and leave yourself open for anything. When pads aren't on, how hesitant are you to do that? Because we don't know that, because it's a 7-on-7 format, and you're not getting those type of looks for us as an evaluation. So there's the good, there's the bad. I think quarterbacks, I like the 4-second rule that they give them, 1, 2, 3, 4. The only thing I don't like, okay, so, and I know this sounds stupid and it's a dumb analogy, but so up until 10U, right? When you do 7, 8, and 9U, 7-on-7, it's flag. Literally, it's flag, and they can rush you on every play. And my son plays that because he's only 9. So now, obviously, he doesn't play that for C4. He's up because he's playing on the 5th grade team, but in the 6th grade squad. But that whenever he gets rushed at quarterback at like 9, you can tell the difference. How are they going to handle somebody chasing after him? You know what I mean? Like, is he going to be able to put it on the spot with somebody right behind him about to grab the flag? Like those type of things, because you're having to think about multiple things while trying to throw a pass. I mean, those are the type of things that I wish they did, but I also get why they don't. Because if they did do those type of things, if you think about it, how many high school football coaches are going to let your kid, your star player, go out there and flag football, getting chased around to where maybe he plants and tears an ACL or something? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's why they go to the no flag football route. That's where they go to just a standing 4-second deal. But it's still entertaining because the skill position guys and linebackers, cornerbacks, and safeties, it's fun to watch them compete. It gets kind of rowdy. So, but for us, the most important thing for us at these 7-on-7 events is information. We get to talk to the kids, get to build the relationships. So that's why we go to all those events. It's crucial. Get to meet the families, get to meet the coaches, the brothers, the sisters, all those type of things, to where you build a trust, you build a relationship, and we can provide more information to you guys when we do that type of stuff. So that's where those type of things come in. As far as the Elite 11 goes, I love that format. Now, obviously, you're not getting a lot of pass rush. They do simulate it to an extent, and you have to throw and hit certain things on movements and stuff like that. And they've got star-studded wide receivers out there running routes for them. So I think you get a good look at what these quarterbacks can be. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, Jackson Arnold put on a show on Sunday, and you guys should be really happy about that. Obviously, he's Elite 11 finalist. I don't think he'll win it, because obviously that's going to be Malachi or Arch. Or
It'll be Malachi or Arch. That's what it'll
yeah,
be.
yep. So,
And that's because of politics more so than anything else.
You're banned. You use the P word, politics. We're not allowed to use those words on
Hopefully
here.
Trent Dilfer isn't watching and I can still get a credential.
Yeah, no joke, right? On top of that, we got to watch practice again today. And before we get into that, what was the biggest thing for you stood out information wise? And be as vague as you want to be on this, obviously, for the VIP members, so they get their money's worth on the VIP. But information wise, what was the biggest thing that stood out for you? I know what my answer is going to be, but what was it for you?
Couple things stand out. And I published some of this information in a section of my notes from yesterday entitled Near Misses. And for those of you that haven't yet read those notes, to kind of sum it all up, there were three very highly regarded players that were very, very close to committing to Oklahoma in recent months. And then that went haywire in some form or fashion. So if you haven't read the scoop on that yet, head over to ouinsider.com VIP. It's still posted up there on the homepage. And you can kind of get the inner workings and the details of what went on in those particular situations with all three of those players. But the one I'd highlight is Jaden Rashada. And Brandon, we talked for the entire month of January about how, this feels like whoever gets to campus first type of thing, because their two offers at the quarterback position in 2023, the two guys that they were pursuing were Arnold and Jaden Rashada. And Arnold scheduled the visit before Rashada's visit, took the visit, ended up committing 9 days later. And then OU had to get on the phone with Rashada, quit recruiting him, cancel the visit, and essentially say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We got our guy. Now, I didn't realize, because to a certain extent, we were we were speculating to a certain extent, which is a big part of what we do. We have to draw inferences. We have to take the information that we have and kind of extrapolate it to try and come to a conclusion about a particular recruit's frame of mind or eventual destination or preferences. So we were talking that up as the type of thing where it felt like at the time, whoever ended up getting to campus first between Arnold and Rashada was going to commit and going to be Oklahoma's quarterback of the future. There's no more speculation because there's no more speculation to be had. I ran into Rashada at Battle Dallas this past weekend, and he recognized me. He pulled me aside and he goes, listen, you want to know something crazy? I was going to commit to Oklahoma. He said it was getting done on my visit. That was my school. That was where I wanted. I was going to take that visit and I was going to commit. And then the week before, Jackson Arnold took the visit and he committed. But man, OU's where I wanted to be. And so that right there tells you how easy Jeff Lebby's job is going to be going forward. And we have already talked about the myriad of names on the board for Oklahoma at the quarterback position in 2024. Guys like DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola, Michael Hawkins, Mabry Mattier. And all four of those guys, Brandon, we've kind of come to the conclusion that if OU offers, they're going to be really, really tough to beat for any of those four. And it's not necessarily a one size fits all blanket answer type of thing, but there are at least a couple of those four that would probably commit pretty instantaneously if they got the offer from OU. But hearing that from the horse's mouth, hearing that from Rashada himself, and I mean, you're talking about two guys in Rashada and Arnold that are consensus top 50 prospects, regardless of position, in the 2023 class. I feel as though everybody kind of figured that Oklahoma's quarterback recruiting was going to take a hit after the former head coach departed. Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case.
No, well, some people wanted to believe that Lebby coming in was a significant drop between Riley. But at the same time, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, yeah, Riley, he helps with the perception, that Levy's going to be able to piggyback off of. But what Lincoln Riley did was no different than what Josh Heupel did, what Chuck Long did, what Mangino did, what Leach did. Like every one of those guys had amazing quarterbacks at the University of Oklahoma, correct? So this has been a 20-year thing to where no matter what people wanted to do with like, oh, well, the only reason why he did this is because, Muleshoe over there helped him, do this. No, that's not true at all. The fact of the matter is Muleshoe piggybacked and maybe took it to another level than where it was. Now Levy has he has a chance to take it to another level compared to what Muleshoe had it. So I think just the name OU, as you were talking about with both those, obviously Jackson Arnold, Jalen Rashada. I mean, even with Lagway, Hawkins, Raiola, like those are the names that everybody are kind of fixated on right now as far as 2024 quarterbacks go. And the funny thing is Michael Hawkins Jr. is a OU legacy. He is the second player to ever start at Allen as a sophomore
and
at quarterback.
Most you won't have to.
Who's the first one?
Inform most people on who the first one was.
No. The other one was pretty good at OU. little bit. So my point is that look, they're going to be able to recruit at an elite level, especially look, if Dylan Gabriel comes in and just lights it up next year, which we all expect him to do to an extent, it's going to be hard pressed to find a 2024 and 2025 elite quarterbacks that aren't going, yeah, I think I'm going to sign up for Norman, because they're going to get their chance. You have Nick Evers, who did the same. He's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the country last year. You've got obviously one of the top, arguably one of the top 5 quarterbacks this year in Jackson Arnold. And, the funny thing is everybody keeps asking, when's he going to get his fifth star? When is he going to get his 5th star? He's at 35th overall, right? And I was talking to Gabe Brooks. The question now is, do you believe there will be 6 first rounders? Because that's how we do it. Like, we're projecting out, like, are these guys, if they're 5 stars, that means they're top 32 player in the country, and they're going to be a first rounder. Will Jackson Arnold be a first rounder? That's the thing that, we're going to have to see. His performance at the Elite 11 didn't hurt. Do I think he jumps up to 5th star ranking? I'm not ready to say that yet. Do I think he deserves it? I personally think he deserves it. But I've always thought, even when I watched him play last year, before he got on Oklahoma's radar, I thought he was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It wasn't close. He had a 5th star talent, and that's where I stood with that. Ironically, though, for me, as far as information goes, it's Peyton Bowen. Like, that is, it's not even a question.
Keep talking.
Well, I mean, he's visiting Oklahoma this week. I've already reported it on OU Insider several days ago, Thursday and Friday.
And this
Norman,
is why
Oklahoma.
you sign up for OU Insider.
Yeah. I mean, he's coming in, committed to Notre Dame, and yet he still continues to show up in Norman. Brandon Hall and Jay Valai have done a fantastic job. It's being led by Brandon Hall, the safeties coach at Oklahoma. But the relationship that they've built with obviously Bowen's family, Mama Amy, brother Eli. Eli's going to come up. I don't know if he's going to get offered, but would I be shocked if Eli Bowen got an offer from OU? No, because he deserves it. The guy is one of the top cornerbacks in the country. He's not the tallest person. He's probably 5'9", 5'10", stretching it. He's 5'9", but in Venables' defense, speed and athleticism, and the fact that he can be a nickel, because he's well put. Parker, you've seen him; he's well put together. Like
Yes,
he can
he
play
is.
the nickel position. He's going to remind a lot of people of Billy Bowman as far as his stature and the way he's built. And athletically, he's right up there. Plays both sides of the field. Super twitchy, super athletic. I mean, he's a freak show, honestly. Like he's a really good player, and I think if he was 6 foot, he would be a 5-star, and I truly believe that. So, if he picks up an offer, some fans might be mad that there's a 5'9" cornerback being offered, but he deserves it. So we'll see. We don't know if that's going to happen. He's coming into town with his brother. Everybody's offering him, so I would assume Oklahoma's probably going to jump on board as well if they like what they see.
You'd hope.
If you're an OU fan,
if
you're an OU fan, you hope that happens, because if that happens, it makes Oklahoma that much harder to hold off with Peyton Bowen, because he's very intrigued with Oklahoma. Is obviously his quarterback, Jackson Arnold's going to OU. He's got people around him in the Geyer program that are very OU centric. He's got Ashton Kozart, who's a really good friend of his, who's going to Oklahoma. Michael Harrison Pilot, who I would lean very heavily towards Oklahoma right now.
Drop the crystal ball, Brandon.
I'm probably going to here in the next few days. So
yeah, you are.
Yeah. So you already have, haven't you?
I have not yet.
Okay. Well, that's right, because you asked me when I was going to do it. That's right. Yeah. So I probably will here in the next few days. So, anyways, Parker, for you've got notes for this weekend. Talk about your takeaways from the Elite Junior Day this weekend. It was huge for OU. And
yeah,
I'll follow you up with some of the stuff that I know fans are going to love to hear.
Yeah, well, and the reality is, folks, if you're not an OU Insider VIP, the information that you're getting here on this live show is a drop in the bucket compared to what you can get with a subscription with us over at OUinsider.com, which is currently 50% off. So what is it, like $53? Gets you a full year of OU Insider VIP, and you get all this information and a whole lot more. But Brandon and I have been straight up inundated, and I mean inundated with information over the weekend by virtue of our travels and conversations with folks that were on campus this past weekend. Look, there's going to be we're swimming against the current to get it all out there and in front of our VIPs, but we'll have it all out in the next couple of days in terms of visitors' reactions and notes from the recruiting trail. Already got a whole bunch of stuff up, but that is what you're getting over at OUinsider.com. Now, as far as takeaways from Junior Day weekend, the one thing, man, I swear we don't make this up. This is just something that happens, but unfailingly, every single time there's one of these big visitor weekends, Brandon, the buzzword, or I suppose the buzz phrase that you hear is family environment. Mm-hmm. Family environment. Everybody will say those two words in conjunction completely organically with regard to Brent Venables and his staff and the culture at the University of Oklahoma. Now, again, want to emphasize, we and I don't think anybody in the know went into this weekend with the expectation that there were going to be any commitments. Obviously, as Brandon and I had mentioned last week on the live show, if Dax Collins had picked up the OU offer, that was probably an open and shut deal, pretty instantaneous. There was always the outside chance that Stacey Gage pulled the trigger, but the odds weren't really in favor of that. So this, as with the March 5th visitor weekend, was much more about building momentum going forward. This one, more so geared toward the 2024 class than the 2023 class. A lot more 2023s were on campus on March 5th. A lot more 2024s were on campus on March 26th. So you look at the laundry list of names that they brought in. We're talking about guys like Gage and T.A. Cunningham, Heaven Brown-Schuler, Jalen Mbakwe, Mario Craver, and C.J. Hurd didn't make it up, but they're rescheduling. They're going to get it.
So
Derek LeBlanc, whom we touched on at the beginning of the show, who spent 5 days, Brandon? 5 days in Oklahoma?
4.5. Yeah, 4.5, something like that. There's a note that OU fans would love to. It's on the board. I mean, I'll leave it at that. Just go ahead, finish up.
Yeah, well, you look at the momentum that they accrued this weekend with some of these underclassmen. I'm actually super excited to see the kind of reverberations that this has, not even in the 2024 class exclusively, but also in the 2025 class, Brandon, because they hosted several of the state's top running backs: Ryan Grayson from Beggs, Caden Knighton from Wynnewood, Ravion Larry from Idabel, who is going to be very, very highly ranked when those rankings come out for the class of 2025. So, look, relationships is what that's what drives the boat for this new staff. That's what's going to enable them to make their hay on the recruiting trail, is relationships. Establishing those relationships early in the process with rising juniors and sophomores is going to put Oklahoma in a really good position to be able to assume the lead in the clubhouse for a lot of these guys over the next year or two. Now, I will also add this: Caden Green was back in town this weekend for his 5th unofficial visit to Oklahoma. 5th visit. He'll be back in town for a 6th unofficial visit come the spring game. We're already looking at this point, it's not an extensive list for the spring game, but it's a pretty star-studded list. You're at the very least looking at Caden Green, LT Overton, Nigel Smith, Trey Wisner. There will be others. There will be many others. So file that date away, April 23rd. That's another date that you will have a lot of blue chippers on with boots on the ground in Norman. But circling back around to Caden Green, man, it's not a whole lot left to say with regard to that kid. I mean,
No.
As I've said many a time, you cannot convince me that a kid who will have taken 7 visits to Oklahoma by the time his recruiting process is wrapped up is going to end up playing his college football anywhere other than the University of Oklahoma. So talking to Caden and talking to his family over the weekend, one thing that really stood out, and this is another thing that stood out to a lot of people, was the intensity of Brent Venables' practice. And I will add this in that regard. One of the things I picked up on, speaking to sources around the team, is that that's one area in which the analysts, that long list of analysts that Oklahoma has brought on, really does them a favor, because from what I was told, talking to people close to the program, the analysts, for the most part, run the practice from an organizational and structure standpoint. And what that does is it allows the coaches to coach. It allows them to really dig in with their guys, point out what they can improve on, scrutinize their technique, and give them pointers here and there. But it really enables the likes of a Brent Venables or a Todd Bates or Miguel Chavis to be in the trenches with their guys and coach them in a very intimate manner. And so we talked about all the benefits of having so many analysts on staff and building a staff consistent with the Alabama model, whether that's recruiting or support analysis. But also, that's another area in which having all those analysts really, really helps, is being able to practice effectively and efficiently. And that was one of the things that stood out to Caden and his family, just witnessing how well oiled everything was, how efficient it all was, and how high intensity the atmosphere was at Oklahoma for practice. So look, Caden Green's going to be taking his 5 officials. He's going to use them all in May and June. I don't know. I don't think they know at this point where the Oklahoma visit is going to fall along the timeline there. But
I thought it was a Champion Barbecue. Was it not? I thought you said June, Champion Barbecue.
I think that is the expectation. It's not set in stone yet. So I'll put it this way. I would be surprised if that isn't the date where he takes his official with OU.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, you're starting to see the additional crystal ball predictions roll in addition to the one that I've had in since last May. I think Caden Green's going to be a Sooner, which is a very, very encouraging trend if you're an Oklahoma fan, because between him and Josh Bates, you have a solid core among the offensive line group. And you have two guys in Green and Bates who are going to be very effective secondary recruiters. Both of those guys are dudes that are going to be able to recruit other dudes around them. So if Oklahoma does indeed close on Caden Green, look, I've spoken to several people who have told me Josh Bates is doing a fantastic job helping Oklahoma recruit. Caden Green's going to have a similar effect if the Sooners pick up his commitment.
I want to piggyback on what you're talking about. The kids that I think that will be huge for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail when they announce it. I think one of them, or I say when, I don't know where these kids are going. Like if I knew, I would already have a crystal ball in. So I mean, I don't know if that was just a Freudian slip. If these kids end up at Oklahoma, I think Caden McDonald will be massive for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. His personality is just so live, man. Just between him and T.A. Cunningham, I think that there is I don't know, like they have like this just a lot of those defensive linemen in the 2024 class, especially, have a very vibrant personality. When you look at David Stone, when you look at T.A. Cunningham, and then when you roll over to the 2023 class, you got Derek LeBlanc, who is just very out there, very animated. So is Caden McDonald. And if Oklahoma can land both of those guys, I think when you add that to what Oklahoma is doing as far as the Josh Bates, the Jackson Arnolds, the Ashton Cozarts, and if they get like a Michael Harrison Pilot on board, I think you can see a lot, and a Caden Green, obviously. I think you can see a lot of things roll over to it being very, I don't know. You've got a lot of leaders in the clubhouse when you have players like that, because they're very out there, very open guys, very social media savvy, very adamant. And I think that helps with a guy like a David Hicks. It helps with a guy like a Anthony Hill, who Oklahoma, with both those players, seems to be either at or near the top for both of them. Now, Anthony Hill's one I'm not as sure about. He comes across as very, I don't know, he changes things up on you so much. Oklahoma seems to be very, and you'll have more on that. I know you have a lot on that, but when I talk to him, it's just kind of like, yeah, I love Oklahoma. I love Venables. I'm going to visit here pretty soon. I wouldn't be shocked if Anthony Hill's at the OU spring game at all. But at this time, I also wouldn't be shocked if he didn't visit until June. Like, that's kind of where I am with this. Like, it's kind of a coin flip with him. He likes Oklahoma a lot, but I think he's not in the same mindset as a David Hicks, where, yeah, David Hicks wants to wait till January to announce. He's obviously going to be committing early and signing early, and he's going to wait and do it quietly. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, you know, he's more, I think David Hicks is more sure about things, in particular when we're talking Oklahoma. Coach Bates and him are just so very tight. And I think you see that a lot with Caden McDonald. You see that a lot with T.A. Cunningham. T.A. Cunningham and Miguel Chavis have built a fantastic bond. I've got a lot of notes coming on that because I talked to him for about a good 30 minutes the other day. And then we text yesterday and today about a lot of different things, including Baby Bop, his his pillow that he is come synonymous with now. I'll just put you like this. Like when you look at, when I got done talking to a lot of the players that were there this past weekend, the one thing I came away with, just like Parker, was they said, well, it's very family oriented. It's very, I just, I felt at home at Oklahoma. It didn't feel, it didn't feel fake. The phrase, it wasn't fake, was said so many times. Like very genuine people was said so many times. The coaches are as real as they get was said so many times to me. And that right there tells you that Venables and his staff are basically saying, take it or leave it. This is who we are. You can take it or leave it, love us or hate us, but we're not going to change just to make you come to Oklahoma because you've got to fit us. We don't fit you. Our culture is what our culture is. And I think
that's a very stark contrast to the way things were formerly run, because we were talking on the phone today, Brandon, and what was the word you used about the former head coach? It was chameleon.
Yeah, he's a chameleon. Yeah.
And I think to a certain extent that was the philosophy in terms of the former staff's ability to recruit was, we can adapt. We can make Oklahoma alluring, and we can make it attractive to whoever might be coming in here on a visit, and we can figure out what they want, and we can portray Oklahoma as something that fulfills those needs or those desires. Not so with Venables and this staff. They're saying, look, this is Oklahoma. This is what it's going to be. This is where we're headed. Can jump on board with us, or you can go somewhere else if you don't feel comfortable here. But regardless, this is what you're getting yourself into at the University of Oklahoma. This is what you can expect. And it's not changing because we have a vision, we have a focus, and we are geared toward executing that vision and that focus.
Yeah. It goes back to kind of the Bill Snyder, the Dabo Sweeney, and the Bob Stoops moniker of, we're going to win with or without you. And more so Bob Stoops moniker and Dabo than probably Bill Snyder, because I don't think he was that brash and abrasive about, and arrogant about how he felt about the program, whereas Dabo and Bob are. And so the Venables he says, look, we're going to kick your butt with or without you. You can come and play with us. We would love to have you help us go kick everybody's butt. But if you're not going to be with us, now you're against us and now you're the enemy, and we're going to go ahead and treat you as such. And I think, and they do it in a loving way. Like they're not pushing you away, saying you're scum or treating you like you're not a part of anything. It's just, they don't want you there because you don't fit their future plans, and they're going to love you from afar, but they're going to kick your butt while they're doing it. And I love that mentality. I love what they're doing. And I was talking to Sean Cooper, C4, the other day, and we were talking about the players and people wanting photos and videos and why am I not getting offers here? And how do you do this? And how do you do this? And I said to him, look, man, and I think these are the type of players Venables is looking for right now, is the type of player I'm about to say. If your social media, if your film doesn't match your social media, meaning if your film is okay, but your social media presence is amazing, you're still not getting offers. And that is the type of player that Venables and the staff is kind of staying away from. They don't want the look at me guy. They'll take the look at me guy as far as if that's their brand, but when it comes to the team-oriented stuff, they're all about the team, and they're 100% sold team first, brand second. Yeah, they'll take that, but they're not going to take that dude that's out there going, screw that, I didn't get this offer this because of blah, blah, blah. That's not going to fly in Norman, Oklahoma anymore. And they're not going to try to bend over backwards to make it work. So I love the culture. And I think the players that they brought in see that. And kids want to be coached hard, and they see that the players are being coached hard, but they're also being loved hard. And when you can balance those two things, special things can happen. And I think you're seeing that right now in Norman. Can they continue that when, the road gets bumpy? We haven't seen that yet. And it's going to get bumpy. And that's what we're going to see really where this culture is at. But right now, this culture is heading in a magnificent direction. If you could name what was the biggest standout for you as far as the practice go? Like what 45 minutes we got today, what was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, we did get a little longer than we had last week, it felt like.
Yep.
So and it was good to be able to take stock of just about everything and not kind of feel rushed along the way. But it did kind of feel, it felt just as frenetic and just as efficient and just as intense. But it did feel like we got to see a little bit more today than we did last week. I was super excited to see both Nick Anderson and Damon Harmon in uniform. Both those guys had sat out practice last week with injuries. And I think particularly seeing Nick Anderson in an OU uniform for the first time, man, he and Jaden Gibson are just so physically impressive. Like if that's the kind of wideout that Jeff Lebby's going to roll with in the years to come, man, you got to be super pumped about the future of the Oklahoma passing attack, because I'm not saying guys like Marvin Mims are going to completely go by the wayside. And when I'm talking about guys like Marvin Mims, I'm talking about the guys that are, 5'10", 5'11", thrive a lot more on speed than they do on size. But there's just something so tantalizing about a wide receiver who can move and that has size, that has height, that has that big old wingspan. And I'm very excited to see what kind of impact those two could make in year one. To me, Jaden Gibson's a guy you almost have to use in red zone situations just because he's a head taller than every other wide receiver you got. So if you get in a situation where you want to throw a fade from the 5-yard line, or at the very least, you want to make the defense think you're going to throw a fade from the 5-yard line, roll Jaden Gibson out there. And Nick Anderson isn't quite as tall as Jaden Gibson, but he's well built. He's muscular. And coming from a high school offense that didn't utilize him a whole lot in the passing game, I don't know that most anybody truly understands how good of a player Nick Anderson has the potential to be. And for those that saw his brother Rodney play running back at Oklahoma, you know how athletic those genes are. Yeah. And in 2022, sure, you're probably looking a lot more of Marvin Mims, Drake Stoops, Theo Weiss, Jalil Farouk than those young freshmen. But I do think just about every single one of those freshman pass catchers, when you're talking about Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Caden Helms, and Jason Llewellyn as well.
The pride of Nebraska, the 402.
Dang right. I think all four of those guys will see the field in some capacity this year. And like I said, I do think if I had to bet money on who gets the most run, I would probably say it's either Helms or Gibson. But I do believe all four of those guys will see action for Oklahoma this fall. And particularly early in the season, when you would imagine Oklahoma is going to be winning games by a lot of points by the time the second half rolls around, it'll be good to see what those guys actually look like in full pads in a collegiate environment with 11 dudes on the other side of the football.
So for me, and well, first to touch on what you just kind of talked about. Yeah, I think Jaden Gibson's he's got to touch. You've got to figure out a way to get somebody that's 6'4", 6'5", the ball in the red zone. Somehow, some way, you've got to figure it out, especially somebody that's as explosive as he is. But for me, I thought the coolest part of today was the fact that they were actually 100% sold on using Billy Bowman in the return game. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be the starter in the return game. I fully expect Drake Stoops and Marvin Mims to be the guys at the punt return. But as far as kick return goes, sign me up for Billy Bowman, bro. Sign me up. Speed. He's hard to tackle in space. Like he's for those of you that haven't watched him play in high school, when he actually got to touch the ball in space, he was magic, man. Like he was so fun to watch. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see Javonte Barnes and Marcus Major potentially return kicks or be the other person returning kicks with him. Those two guys, the more I watch Javonte Barnes, the more I fall. Like I loved him in high school, but the more I get to see like eyes on him person, the more I fall in love with what he is as a player. I still believe Eric Gray and Marcus Major are going to be tough to beat out for 1-2. But if I had to pick if you gave me the over under of Javonte Barnes having 300 yards this year, 350, I'm taking the over.
Yeah.
Still, even as a third back, still. And that shows you how good he is.
It's going to be a lot of buzzing from the Javonte Barnes hive over the next few months.
Yeah, I think so. If they get Brandon Campbell from USC to transfer, which we heard is a definite possibility, I don't know what that'll do to Javonte Barnes' chances, but regardless, I would still pick him. Even as fourth back, I would pick him getting 200 plus, just because I know what Levy loves to do in the third and fourth quarter. Like if there's a good lead, he's going to run that power and he's going to make you work for it defensively, and he's going to ride the offensive line. The other thing that kind of stood out with me today was, well, the fact that both centers had like either a boot or a cast on. Now they were both suited up, and I will say that Congo participated in the practice, whereas Rain was more of a bystander and just kind of stood around and watched, even though he was fully suited up. He had I don't remember, what was it, the left foot that he had the air cast on?
I don't remember which foot it was offhand.
But it looked precautionary. It looked like probably he rolled his ankle and they didn't want him to get hurt anymore out there. So we're going to have him sit out probably in this practice. And like if he's out there next practice, it wouldn't shock me. The boot that he had on it was the air boot. So mainly because he was suited up. Like that was the deal. Like suiting up tells you that he's close to coming back. The last thing that was really interesting for me was essentially the linebackers and Venables. Venables was getting after it with the linebackers, folks. Like I've got some photos coming up that I'm going to post and like just animated Venables, and they're showing him what they need to be doing. He's jumping around. They laid trash cans out and they were working on blitzes and kind of how they rotate as far as the back side of the front seven would rotate on the blitzes and how they would do coverages and all that type of stuff. So it was really cool to watch watch him teach. Like he was a teacher out there and he was very animated doing it. So I loved all that today. I thought that was probably more the interesting aspects of the 45 minutes we got, because we didn't get to see the team, the one-on-ones or anything like that, unfortunately. Let's get to the questions real quick, Parker.
Okay.
Do we have any questions from the Sooner fans before we close out? I see there's a Texas fan in here causing some problems, but we'll skip over that as best we can. Yes, Colton Yarborough is 6'5", 215-pound eighth grader from Caddo, Oklahoma. Is Rashada better than Arnold? I thought Rashada was the top choice before Arnold committed.
I had to answer this question today, and here's what I'll say. I don't
Yep.
want to say one is better than another until I see them side by side at the Elite 11 finals. I feel like that's only fair because
Mhm.
I haven't seen Arnold in a 7-on-7 environment. I've seen more of Arnold in a game environment than I have of Rashada. I do love Rashada's tape, but I think the one thing that you can't really quantify about Arnold's game is the fact that he's a gamer. Man, he's competitive. And there's just something about him when he puts the pads on. He's one of those guys that, sure, maybe he'll be a little bit less jaw-droppingly impressive in a 7-on-7 type of environment than Rashada, but he also, like, we watched him come within a whisper, Brandon, of leading Denton Geyer to a massive state championship upset victory over Austin Westlake, a team that was absolutely loaded. And so before I render a judgment on whether Rashada and Arnold are better, and they are very comparable, I want to wait till June. I want to see them side by side at the Elite 11 finals and see what they look like when subjected to 3 days of very diverse drills.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to say. They're ranked fairly similar right now as well. Like, anytime you get between, if you're between, I would say 15 and 50, I would even go even further than that. I would say 15 and 100. There's you're splitting hairs for a lot of guys. So, yeah, I don't know. I think regionally, I think it makes sense to take Arnold because he's going to be the guy that's close with all the players that you're interested in. And Jackson Arnold is also from Georgia, something people keep forgetting. He's originally from Georgia. So guess who one of his best friends is? Literally one of his best friends. Caden McDonald, folks. 4-star defensive line target who was just visiting Oklahoma. They played together all through Little League. So before Jackson Arnold moved from Georgia to Texas. So I think Jackson Arnold's mom's like some big wig for, I want to say it's State Farm or one of the insurance companies in Plano. Anyways, that's what I was told. Who of the 2024 quarterbacks does OU have a legit chance to get?
All of them.
Yeah, I would say Lagway and Hawkins Jr. are probably your top two choices if you're an OU fan, because it makes sense. One, regionally. Two, Hawkins Jr. obviously being a legacy. He's got offers from a bunch of people already. I'm actually shocked Oklahoma hasn't offered him. It really is. Are you shocked too, Parker? Like, it's kind of weird, right?
No, I'm not shocked, actually. And the more I think about it, Brandon, the more I actually figure it might be a while till we see Oklahoma offer their quarterback in the class of 2024. As a matter of fact, it could be all the way on the other side of this fall season, because the way I look at it, do you want to have a situation like you did with Arnold and Rashada, where, sure, you had two really highly qualified guys that wanted to play football at your institution and that were going to come play for you one way or another, but then it ends up being an arms race and you got to get on the phone with one of the guys and say, hey, sorry, we can't honor your visit. We can't take your commitment. We already got our guy. To me, I think what you want to do, especially now that it just seems like you have all these guys that are going to bend over backwards to come play quarterback at OU. I think maybe what I would do if I were Jeff Levy is just wait to see what the junior tape looks like. Wait to see how these guys progress throughout the offseason. Watch how they look as juniors in high school this fall. And then you peg your one guy. You peg the guy that's at the top of your board, whether that's Mabry or Raiola or Lagway or Michael Hawkins, or maybe somebody we aren't even talking about, like Adrian Posse from Florida. One way or another, figure out who your number one priority is at quarterback. Offer him, pursue him fervently, and don't start making contingency plans unless you start to get the sense that you're not going to get that quarterback, or until the can gets kicked down the road far enough that you have to start developing a contingency plan. But to me, I almost think Oklahoma is going to be able to adopt the exact same strategy that they used under the former head coach, which is we're going to focus on one guy. We're going to get our one guy by hook or by crook. We're going to get him. And so I feel like Jeff Lebby's probably going to be in the type of position where he can do something similar to that.
I kind of agree with you on maybe the offer standpoint, but I'm going to go a little earlier, maybe after like the first 4 games in October is where they kind of say, okay, we're going to offer this guy, and this is the guy we're going to go after. And my reasoning is because where OU stands with all these 2024 players, you're going to want that leader, which is always the quarterback, to be in the boat and to kind of set the precedence for where you're going to go from that point on. The good news, if you're OU fans, and if you're Jeff Lebby, you don't have to leave the state of Oklahoma for the best or some of the best talent in the 2025 class, because there's like 4 dudes that are going to be ranked super high. Like it's actually one of the more loaded quarterback classes I've ever seen.
You're not lying.
In the state of Oklahoma. So that's good news. Let's see here. We got a few text messages from Spencer on the other end. Are the Overton brothers coming in for the spring game? Yes, they are.
Yes, they'll be there.
That is still the plan until further notice. And I kind of am starting to get, I've got the feeling that, not really the feeling, kind of, there's some continued buzz even this past weekend that kind of question where A&M stands with everything, because you didn't hear a lot of buzz coming from that visit, which I thought was a little odd, to be honest with you. But we've talked about it on OU Insider VIP. There's reasons why there's some buzz with A&M. I don't know how much I buy it right now. I almost feel like it's kind of the wool being pulled over your eyes type deal. And then next thing you know, bam, they're in College Station when it's all said and done. But there is some buzz that maybe A&M's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. I don't know if there's any fact to it. I'm still leaning as there's no fact to it until they decide they're not going to College Station. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do. I do think OU has a really good chance with the Overton brothers, like a very good chance. And we're going to find out more about that on after the April 23rd, because they said they're going to make a decision in early May. So we'll know pretty soon after all these visits. Kanai Walker, I asked a question to Venables today. And look, they expect big things from him. They said he's consistent, he's big, he's long, he's athletic, he's fast, he's physical, he does everything that you want. And they said from a rotation standpoint, from a depth standpoint, the fact that he's still a freshman, they love it. They think that he has a high ceiling, and they expect some big things from Kanai Walker before it's all said and done at OU. Projected spring game visitors. That's kind of a mouthful, but I'm going to throw one out there that I didn't earlier after Parker named. Parker, who did you name? You named.
So LT Overton, Nigel Smith, Trey Wisner, Caden Green. Those are the 4 I know of right now. And Micaiah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Micaiah Overton. And you know of another, you're just letting me say it since I'm the one that know about it. But Derek LeBlanc will be back, folks. And that's not the only time he's coming back. So we'll leave it at that. He will be back for the spring game, according to his father, Ricardo. And I know Ricardo is probably either watching or will watch this later on. So hello, Ricardo. Thank you for watching. He said he's a big fan of our YouTube and our podcast. So we appreciate him listening and watching all the time. Who would be, and there's going to be more, obviously. Like, there's going to be big names across the board showing up. You said Caden Green already, right?
Caden Green will be there.
Yeah,
yep.
I mean, yeah. So look, there's going to be more. I think Josh Bates, Jackson Arnold, Ashton Kozart will be there. It's going to be a big deal. There's going to be a lot of unofficial visits. There'll probably be a few official visits that weekend as well. We just don't have them lined up yet. Picciotti's coming in, the 4-star linebacker from Pennsylvania. What's his first name? I just went blank on his first name. Phil Picciotti. That's right. Very Northeastern name, by the way. Love it. Very Italian. So he's from the Pennsylvania area. I mean, it fits in with him. He definitely sounds like a Penn State linebacker, and he's got a couple crystal balls, Penn State, rightfully so. But he's been to, this will be the third time he's been to Oklahoma. So we'll see.
Follow the
Venables, if Venables and company can, jump Penn State right now, because Penn State's still the leader. Then the other one is the top 2024 linebacker in the country, 5-star. He's coming in this weekend. Brown. Oh my gosh.
Jalen Brown?
No. It's the 2024 linebacker. I just went blank.
Linebacker. Sammy Brown.
Dadgum, man. I went totally blank on these names. Sammy Brown, 5-star, 2024 linebacker, is going to be in town as well out of Georgia. So that is big. Oklahoma is hosting once again. That's Venables. Venables and the linebackers. People show up, want to play for him. We'll see where that goes from there. Who would you pin in as the starting safeties next year? You go first. I'll go second.
Trey Morrison, Key Lawrence. Don't overthink it. Those are the two dudes.
I think. But see, Trey Morrison could be the nickel. So I am overthinking this now.
Oh boy.
So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to say your nickel's going to be Billy Bowman. I don't know, man. Do you think
I'm not convinced Billy Bowman sticks at safety, and I've said that.
Yeah.
I
do
think
at corner. Do you think you think he will fit at corner though?
Not an outside corner, no. But I like Trey Morrison is a guy you have to put on the field.
So nickel, you think nickel will be where Billy Bowman will stick then?
Yeah, probably so. Just because you're not going to see a true nickel.
That's what we agree
on an every down basis. Yeah, and so I think Trey Morrison has started 44 games, and we know Key Lawrence is all but locked in as your starting strong safety. Those are the two dudes I bet good money on in the back end
Venables
of that secondary.
And Venables has done nothing but talk those two up all spring already and before. So they talked about Trey Morrison today, and he just kept saying consistent. Everything he does is consistent. He's always in the right place. He does this, he does that. Kind of the same things that we're hearing about Justin Broyles, who I think is going to play a lot again. And if you watched the end of last year, if you watched probably the last 4 or 5 games last year, Justin Broyles had a fantastic end of the season last year.
Oh boy, Justin Broyles haters.
I know, and everybody hates
woodwork as we speak.
Why, dude? 2019 was so long ago. He was thrown into a position he wasn't even ready for.
Yeah, well,
and now he's a completely different player. He proved it last year. How many picks did he end up with? 3 at the end of the season?
I think he had 2 picks. Yeah,
but they were crucial. They were big ones too.
Yeah,
and he even had a touchdown. He even had a big play in Bedlam. Like that's what right. I mean. I'm like, dude, like he's earned the right to have the respect from fans at this point. And he loves the university too. So I guess I'm never going to fall into the Justin Broyles hate category just because I think he deserves some respect at this point. He earned it last year.
All right, Brandon, we got 2 more questions and then we'll wrap it up as we're north of an hour here. Okay. But one viewer asked, do you think the O-line will get better this year given the new scheme? I think they'll get better this year given Jerry Schmidt. I think that's the biggest X factor.
I agree. Jared, we've actually talked about this probably ad nauseum, to be honest, about what the difference he's going to be for the defense and offensive line as a whole. The way they're not running 5Ks anymore to get in shape. They're pushing sleds for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and they're stopping for 30 seconds. Pushing sleds, stopping, pushing. They're building those fast, twitchy, deep muscles. They're building that power. They're doing the things that need to be done to play that position. They're not skill position guys the way they were trained by the previous regime. So, yes, I think that will be huge. I mean, you saw how good the offensive lines were under Smitty. And 2018 was the last year that you kind of had the residual from Smitty because everybody else changed from 2019 on, and they were all Benny Wiley guys. So, yeah, I totally agree with what Parker said. Yes, they will be better. Plus, they're going to run a lot more power, which is a lot more north and south. Raym talked about it the other day. A lot more north and south, not a lot of, east and west timing blocks. So
yeah.
Finally,
yeah. When are we going to start seeing commits roll in? I'd say May. I'd say May is probably a safe bet. That's going to be.
I think you'll get a few at the end of April.
Yeah,
maybe.
And that's certainly a possibility. But as we get to the beginning of official visit season, which dawns on Friday, as a matter of fact, you're going to start to see things accelerate. You're going to start to see the ball roll downhill a lot faster than it has thus far. I think May, and at the very least by Champion Barbecue weekend in June, you're going to start to see the commitments fly in.
And we both agree that there will be double-digit commits by the amount of commits in 2023 by the 1st of August, correct?
Yes, 1,000%.
I said 13, and you said 11?
11,
think it was. Yeah. So that's kind of where I think, because you also have to remember, folks, Venables doesn't allow visits. So there's going to be a lot of guys that want to take visits during the season to go to games. And so OU is going to be a lot like Clemson, where they close out really strong in December, January, and February moving forward. It's not going to be like Riley, where you have 75% of the class done by August and you're biting your nails watching them take visits forever. So that's where that's going to be moving forward. And so the excitement of National Signing Day is back in Norman. It's back, baby. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider YouTube Live. I want to thank you guys for being on there. We're doing the 50% off right now. So $53.70 will get you, I think it's $107.40. So it's almost $108 worth of VIP value for a mere $53. Literally $53 will get that for you right now. And that only lasts for the next, I think, an hour and a half. So if you get on with us right now, you can be a part of that. You'll get all the spring game. You'll get the all the big visits coming up throughout the month of April, May, June, July, August, all the off-season stuff, all the spring notes, the spring game notes that we do. We do a lot of team notes. So we do live practice reports. So we bring stuff to you that you can't see. We bring you what we see live while we're at practice. And then we bring source notes following that later on each and every week. So a lot of team stuff going on, lots of recruiting stuff. If you don't want to do that and you just want to give us a try, it's $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. But I do want to remind you that if you sign up for the 50% off, you do get to go see all other 250 247 sites on the VIP boards. So you get to see Oklahoma State, Texas, whatever, A&M, Alabama, blah, blah, Georgia, whatever, whoever you want to go look at and see what they're doing recruiting. You got it right there. See what their mods are, and you can go talk on their boards too. So that's going to do it for us. I want to thank you guys once again for being with us here at the OU Insider YouTube Live, Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed night.